So do we? All right, Mr. Peak.
How you doing?
So how are you, sir? So the state, your attorney asked for a no-low plea. The state is objecting to a no-low plea on your case. So your attorney wants to know if you're okay with a guilty plea. But don't say anything else. That's a yes or no question.
Don't say nothing right now.
Well, here's the thing. Do you want to talk to your attorney again about the guilty plea, or do you want to make a decision now?
I can make a decision. The stipulation, I wouldn't get probation and do the class, right?
I don't think anything's going to change about what y'all discussed, but it's just no-low versus guilty plea.
It's fine.
Okay, Mr. White, is that okay with you?
That's fine, Your Honor.
All right. So, Mr. Peak, raise your right hand for me. You solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this matter will be true.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can put your hand down. So, sir, you're before the court on 2023 CR 03730. Parents, Bernard Peak. You're represented by the law firm of Lister, Holt, and Dennis. Mr. White is your attorney, Justin White. You're entering a plea of guilty to count 1, battery, family violence, count 2, battery, count 3, simple battery, family violence, and count 4, simple battery will merge with count 1. By entering that plea of guilty, sir, you give up the right to have a trial by jury or judge. You give up the right to have the state prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You give up the right to have the presumption of innocence in your favor. You give up the right to present testimony and evidence on your behalf, to not incriminate yourself. And if you're not a United States citizen, a plea of guilty or no contest could negatively impact your immigration status. Do you understand all of these things?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Actual basis of recommendation, please.
Yes, Your Honor. And I do believe that the victim is on the call and would like to speak as well.
All right. And who would that be?
Good morning, Your
Mr.
Honor.
Renda Peak. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Go ahead, ma'am.
Oh.
Ms. Janvier.
Okay. On April the 7th of 2023, an officer responded to 5530 Old Dixie Road. That would be apartment C as in cat 12. And that was in Forest Park, Georgia, where the incident did occur in Clayton County. The officer had been advised that the caller that she called and only provided the address and then hung up. When the officer arrived on the scene, he came into contact with the victim, Mr. Renda Peak, and noticed a red bruise on the right side of her face. When he inquired about the bruise, she covered it and asked what bruise. The officer then attempted to speak to. She kept saying that nothing happened. She didn't want the defendant, Mr. Peak, to go to jail. Then spoke with Mr. Peak, who advised that there was a verbal altercation and nothing else happened. At that time, based on the observation of the officer, he took Mr. Peak into custody. The state is recommending 12 months to serve 45 days. Okay. And credit for time served, the balance to be probated. A $300 fine suspended. The FFIP and no contact with the victim, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Peak, raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this matter will be true?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can put your hand out. Tell me what you need me to know about this case.
Your Honor, I called the police for civil assistance that day, to altercation. However, I wasn't anticipating my husband to be arrested, and he is the primary breadwinner in the household. So I would like to know if the stipulations of the bond conditions could be altered to where we are able to have contact. We have 2 young children, and I also just found out that I'm expecting a child. So I'm not able to work or do anything at this point. He is the primary breadwinner in the home.
Okay, so ma'am, when you say civil assistance, where did you get that from?
Just to call the police, I guess, to kind of like mediate or to like come in and negate, because I didn't want the altercation to get any worse.
Okay, so Miss Peak, here's the thing. Police are charged with doing a lot of stuff, but mediation is not really their thing. In a domestic violence situation, they are trained to separate the parties, figure out if there's a primary aggressor that they can identify, and then remove that person, usually to jail. The issue is that we get a lot of couples who get into an altercation and they think that the police are just going to show up and like just say, okay, I want everybody to act right, and we're just going to escort you down the street, and you can take a cooling off period, and you take a cooling off period. But what I want you to understand is one of the most dangerous things that police face is when they go into a domestic violence situation. Because what happens is the police go in thinking that they're trying to help stop the violence and help the injured party. And what can happen to them is the aggressor then can turn on them, and the person who is the injured party can turn on them. So domestic violence situations are one of the most dangerous things that police face. In addition to that, we know because of years of training that you don't just remove the person who's considered to be the primary aggressor and then let them go back. After decades of doing that, we now realize that's when people get killed. So you say, oh, well, we're going to go in and we're just going to hey, dude, we're just going to take you outside and tell you don't hit your wife. And then we're going to leave because we've made sure that the violence or the situation has calmed down. Well, studies have shown, experience have shown, that's not what works. And so when you call the police in a situation where you and Mr. Peak get into it, somebody's getting arrested. I'm just going to be clear. So just be clear that there's no such thing as a civil assistant when it comes to police. That's not what they do.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
So here's the other thing. You've listed several vulnerabilities that we're trained to look at when it comes to a situation where domestic violence might be a part of it. You don't work. He's the primary breadwinner. You have small children. You're expecting a child, which means that you're dependent upon Mr. Peak. Mr. Peak, as the person who in this situation has been considered the primary aggressor, you have to understand that with all of these factors in play, you need to change how you communicate. Ms. Peak, you probably need to change how you communicate also, but you're not the one in this situation who's in jail and who's facing the charges. Now, the Family Violence Intervention Program is the program that will help you make changes in how you communicate in a situation. A lot of times, and I'm just going to be clear with you, a lot of times people don't understand that there's always going to be some kind of issues in a relationship. You're never going to have as much money as you think you need. There's always going to be either, if not financial issues, then personality issues, either outside the relationship or inside the relationship. No relationship is perfect. But if you communicate in a way where violence is in the home, then not only are you running the risk of somebody getting severely hurt, but you also are teaching that to your children that this is what you look for. Mr. Peak, you have little girls?
No, ma'am.
This new one might be. Just think of how you would feel if you walked up and somebody told you there was some dude beating on your little girl. So if there's violence in the home, what you teach your children is you're either going to teach them to be, and women aren't the only victims of domestic violence. Men can be too. So you're going to teach your children to be victims or aggressors. So when I'm about ready to retire, your kids will be standing in front of me because this is the behavior daddy taught them.
Yes, ma'am.
You feel me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
Ms. Peak, as much as I know that there are factors where you feel like you need him back in the house right now, I'm not doing that. But what I will say is, Mr. Peak, you can work and send money to your house to take care of your family. That's what a man is supposed to do. So if you want to do that, you can mail money to the house, a money order, a check, however you want to do it, but no communication in that envelope except for money. No text messages, no phone calls, none of that. If you want to get to the point where there's a possibility that you might be around for the birth of this new child, then you need to make sure you do what I tell you to do in this sentence and get it right.
Yes, ma'am.
We clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Peak, sometimes you got to take a step back to take a step forward. And if nothing changes in the way y'all communicate, then this is going to happen again.
I understand.
Okay, so, sir, I'm going to accept your plea of guilty to count 1. Counts 2, 3, and 4 will merge. I'll sentence you to 12 months to serve 45 days, credit for time served. The balance will be probated for you to pay a fine in the amount of $300. The fine will be suspended as long as you go to Family Violence Intervention Program and complete the program. And you're to have no contact with Dorinda Peak. If you make substantial progress in completing the program, you can ask your probation officer to ask for a modification of the bond conditions, and we will all get together to discuss that on a hearing. But other than that, you're to have no contact with Ms. Peak. Now, Ms. Peak, let me tell you, other than him sending money, this is what this means, Mr. and Mrs. Peak. If you have contact with her, you run the risk of spending the rest of the 12 months coming back to jail, and you could also be charged with additional misdemeanors or felonies. All right? Any questions, Mr. Peak?
You say you got any questions?
That's the question.
She said you got.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So you saying no? When you saying no contact, can't call like my kids, like their phone, nothing like that.
Nothing. No.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the next thing, Mr. Peak, is I'm going to put you in a breakout room with Mr. Carmichael. Mr. Carmichael is our probation expert. He's going to tell you everything you need to know about probation. The quickest way to get rearrested and to come back to see me is to fail to go to your probation reports. So please make sure you report for probation and don't mess that up. You hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The breakout room for probation is number 6. So the jail and Mr. Carmichael, when you come back, we'll go to the next one. All right. Thank you, Ms. P.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a good day.
You too. Mr. Bagwell?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Raise your right hand for me, sir.
Yes,
You solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this matter will be true?
It will be true. Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can put your hand down. So, Mr. Bagwell, you're before the court on 2023 CR 03770 for Stephen O'Brien Bagwell for simple battery, family violence count 1, and that simple battery count 2. My understanding from your attorney, Mr. White, of the law firm of Lister, Holt, and Dennis, is that you're entering a plea of no load to count 1, and count 2 will merge. By doing so, you give up the right to have a trial by jury or judge. You give up the right to have the state prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You give up the right to have the presumption of innocence in your favor. You give up the right to subpoena witnesses, present testimony and evidence on your behalf, to not incriminate yourself or present any testimony or evidence against yourself. And if you're not a United States citizen, a plea of guilty or no contest could negatively impact your immigration status. Do you understand all of these things, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Factual basis and recommendation, please. Mr. Bagwell, you're squatting down so I can see you, but you can stand up, sir. I see your face. Okay. I just didn't want you hurting your back.
Ma'am, I got an injury. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, are you comfortable?
Yes, ma'am. I'm comfortable right here. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So, factual basis and recommendation, please.
Yes, Your Honor. On May 1st of 2023, an officer was dispatched to 829 Warren Drive in Forest Park, Georgia, where the incident did occur in Clayton County. It was in reference to a domestic disturbance. At the time, the officer made contact with the victim, that is Ms. Clarice Bagwell. who advised that her son, Mr. Stephen Bagwell, had elbowed her in the face multiple times. At that time, the officer made contact with Mr. Bagwell and ordered him out of the house, and he was taken into custody. Your Honor, as far as the recommendation, the state is recommending 12 months. Your Honor, I apologize. This is on me. This is not my recommendation. I opened this up. I'm looking at it. I don't agree with this, and I apologize. Not looking at what I'm looking at. The original recommendation is 12 months to serve, 8 days credit for time served, with the balance to be suspended, and a no violent or harassing contact with the victim. But I'm looking at the reason that Mr. Bagwell is in custody right now is because he violated the bond condition that was set on this particular incident.
Put my hands on nobody. I was drunk.
And that is that he was not to return
He just wanted me to get
to the location. And that's why he was taken into custody, because he was at the location. So,
Okay, do you need to talk to Mr. White again? What do we need to do?
yes, Your Honor, and I apologize.
All right, Mr. Tomlin, can I get Mr. Tomlin? Mr. Bagwell, you okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. I know you're in pain. I'm trying to get this.
It was just that the whole thing was really because I was under the influence. Nobody was into it very well. So
I got you. Don't tell me too much, though. All right, so sir, go back with the just hold Mr. Bagwell and let me have Tomlin, please. Mr. Tomlin, it's my understanding that you do not wish to have Lister Holt and Dennis represent you, that you wish to represent yourself. Is that correct?
No, yes, I didn't. I can't get this case going no farther or get it extended because I got 4 kids at home with one on with Charcot syndrome, and I ain't giving them a false name. I'm asking.
Hold on. You asking for time served. I got that.
I'm asking for time served my probation, y'all. I got to get home to my kids.
Okay, raise your right hand for me. You solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give will be true.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so Mr. Marquez Lanier Tomlin, you can put your hand down. You're asking the court to allow you to go pro se and represent yourself, and you do not wish to have Lister Holt and Dennis represent you.
No, ma'am, because it ain't nothing but a forgiven false name, ma'am.
Okay, what's the recommendation from the state?
12 months to serve, 5 days, the balance suspended, no new violation of the law, and the second given false name will be no for us.
All right, and credit for time served?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, sir, is that what you wish to take?
That's fine. That is fine. Thank you very much.
All right, so Mr. Tomlin, did you wish to enter a plea of guilty to count 3 and count 4 would be no pros?
Boy, that is fine. As long as I go, that's fine.
All right, Mr. Tomlin. Well, by doing so, you give up the right to have a trial, and by jury or judge, you give up the right to have the state prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You give up the right to have the presumption of innocence in your favor. You give up the right to present evidence and testimony to not incriminate yourself. And if you're not a United States citizen, a plea of guilty or no contest could negatively impact your immigration status. So, sir, did you wish to, you understand all of those rights?
I understand all that, man. I understand all that.
All right,
good.
so
Good to go.
we're good to go. I'll send you to 12 months to serve 5 days credit for time served. Balance suspended, and you're free to go as long as you have no new violations of the laws of the state of Georgia.
That's right. They're going to get my sketch back. Oh, man.
Mr. Tomlin, you can go. Thank you.
Thank you. How beautiful.
You too, Mr. Tomlin. All right, so Mr. Bagwell,
Yes, ma'am.
the attorney has spoken with the state.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. White?
I don't need to speak with them.
Okay. All right, what's the recommendation?
It's still the same. I didn't realize that he had a $30,000 bond.
You who to what?
He has a $30,000 bond, Your Honor, for the other case. It's fine.
All right, so I'm going to accept your plea of nolo. I'll sentence you to 12 months to serve 8 days, credit for time served, balance suspended as long as you have no violent or harassing contact with Miss Clarice Bagwell. All right, so Miss Bagwell, did you still wish to say something in this case?
Ma'am?
Miss Bagwell was on and she had mentioned she wanted to speak. So Mr. Bagwell, it is my understanding that you had been sober for quite some time.
Yes, ma'am. For
and you
12
fell off the wagon.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm sure it is your mother's sincerest hope that you focus on your sobriety and trying to get back on track.
Yes, ma'am.
I know with an injury, sometimes that can be hard because you got to balance the pain meds versus your addiction. But whatever you use to maintain your sobriety before, I need you to start thinking about getting back to
Do
that.
that now.
Okay, and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
if you are a 12-stepper, you can, when you get out, you can go back to NA or AA meetings to get back on track and get your sponsor involved, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm going to accept your plea. That's your sentence, and I'll send you back with the state. With the sheriff's office.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, so Miss Bagwell, you'll be able to have contact with your son because it's no violent or harassing contact, but it's my understanding that he's still got some other things pending that I don't control. The jail, everybody, thank you so much, and we're adjourned at this time.